Frankfurt, September 1961. The International Motor Show, the IAA, is buzzing. Volkswagen has at this point essentially one car to its name, the Beetle. And the Beetle has been phenomenally successful, but the company's board knows that cannot last forever. Sooner or later, people are going to want something a little bigger, a little more polished, a little more grown up. So Volkswagen builds a better Beetle, a smarter Beetle, a car with more room inside, a proper luggage area at the front and the rear, a more powerful engine, and lines that would not embarrass you at a hotel valet stand. They call it the Type 3, though the public will know it as the VW 1500, and later the VW 1600. And then, in a move that still puzzles historians and enthusiasts today, Volkswagen of America drags its heels for nearly 4 years before bringing it officially to its largest and most profitable market. When the company does finally commit to selling it in the United States as the Fastback and the Squareback, starting with the 1966 model year, it markets the cars almost as afterthoughts. The Beetle is the star. The Type 3 is the polite, capable second cousin that nobody at head office really wants to talk about. By the time production ended in July of 1973, Volkswagen had built 2,587,989 of them. That is according to the official Volkswagen Group production record. Over 1,400,000 were saloon cars, the Notchback and the Fastback, and more than 1,200,000 were estate variants, what Americans knew as the Squareback. Not bad for a car VW never really wanted you to buy. Today, we are going to go through this car carefully. Its origins, its engineering, its body styles, its place in history, and what it is worth to collectors right now. If you owned one, drove one, or simply remember seeing one parked on your block in 1968, this one is for you. Section 1. The secret birth of a new Volkswagen. Here is a detail that most people do not know. When one of the major production buildings at the Wolfsburg plant was damaged by fire in the late 1950s, the order came from VW management to keep the windows boarded up after repairs were completed. It was behind those covered windows, hidden from the outside world, that the Type 3 was born beginning around 1959. By the time 1960 had come to a close, prototypes had been thoroughly tested. Yet at the 1960 Geneva Motor Show, Volkswagen's official position was that there were no new designs in the works. Not a word, even as the whispers were spreading through the European automotive press that something was coming. It was Motor Trend magazine that got the first real scoop. A photographer caught an unmarked prototype undergoing cold weather testing in snow-covered Sweden in early 1961. The car was draped in wires and instrumentation, but the basic shape was clear. Something new was coming from Wolfsburg. That something was unveiled officially at the 1961 Frankfurt Motor Show in September. 3 body styles were planned from the start: a 2-door notchback saloon, a station wagon they called the Variant, and tantalizingly, a convertible. 12 prototype convertibles were actually built. In the end, every single one of them was scrapped. The convertible never entered production. One survivor eventually made it to the Volkswagen Museum in Wolfsburg. Production of the Notchback began in August of 1961, a month before the public launch. The Variant, what Americans would come to call the Squareback, followed in February of 1962. And the sports-oriented Fastback, the TL or Touring Limousine, did not arrive until August of 1965. Section 2. The engineering trick that changed everything. To understand what made the Type 3 genuinely clever, you have to understand what Volkswagen was working with and what they did about it. The Beetle's flat-4 engine sat in the rear of the car, with the cooling fan mounted directly on top of the engine, driven off the dynamo. The whole assembly was tall. That height was not a problem in the Beetle. The engine simply filled the space under the rear bonnet lid. But in the Type 3, Volkswagen wanted usable luggage space back there. A proper boot, not just an engine cover you had to lift to check the oil. The solution was what engineers called the suitcase engine, or the pancake engine, as enthusiasts have always called it. Volkswagen's engineers moved the cooling fan from the top of the engine to the end of the crankshaft. This fundamentally changed the engine's profile. Instead of standing tall, the flat four now sat low and wide, tucked under the floor of the rear cargo area. The result was remarkable. The Type 3 had a front luggage compartment, 180 litres, and a rear luggage compartment of 200 litres, accessible from outside through a proper boot lid. The engine was hidden beneath the floor of that rear area, accessed through a panel. Volkswagen made famous advertising out of this. In one American television commercial, a very young Dustin Hoffman demonstrated the Fastback and, with apparent bewilderment, failed to locate the engine. The ad concluded, "Come into your Volkswagen dealer, they'll show you where the motor is." The original 1961 engine displaced 1,493 cubic centimeters, the 1.5-liter flat four that gave the car its 1,500 name. In standard trim, it produced 45 PS, or roughly 44 brake horsepower. In August of 1963, Volkswagen introduced two tuning levels, the 1,500 new, normal, with a single carburetor producing 44 horsepower, and the 1,500S, super, fitted with twin downdraft Solix carburetors and a higher compression ratio of 8.5 to 1, producing 53 horsepower. The S model had a quoted top speed of 84 miles per hour, which was genuinely useful performance in the early 1960s. The wheelbase was identical to the Beetle's 2,400 millimeters or 94.5 inches. But the Type 3 was notably longer and wider, giving passengers and luggage appreciably more room than any Beetle ever offered. Section 3, the 1,000, 600 engine and front disc brakes. In August of 1965, the start of the 1966 model year, Volkswagen made two important changes that transformed the Type 3 into a much more complete car. First, the engine grew to 1,584 cubic centimeters. The new one, 600cc flat 4, produced 65 brake horsepower in twin carburetor form, with a top speed in the region of 84 to 87 miles per hour, depending on configuration. This was the engine that would carry the Type 3 through to the end of production in 1973. Second, and equally important for any driver who had lived with drum brakes, front disc brakes were fitted as standard from this point forward. Previous models had relied on twin leading shoe drums all round, which were adequate but unremarkable. The discs transformed the car's stopping ability and brought it into line with contemporary European standards. It was also with the 1966 model year that Volkswagen of America finally committed to selling the Type 3 properly in the United States. They chose the Fastback and the Squareback. They never brought the Notchback to America at all, and they never imported the gorgeous Type 34 Carman Ghia, which shared the Type 3 platform and was styled by Sergio Sartorelli at Carrozzeria Ghia. 42,505 of those were built between 1962 and 1969, making it the most expensive and luxurious Volkswagen of the 1960s, yet no American dealer ever had one on the showroom floor. In the US market, the Type 3 competed directly against the Chevrolet Corvair, a rear-engined, air-cooled six-cylinder American compact that had been introduced in 1960. It also faced the Renault 8, another rear-engined European offering. Of the three, the Volkswagen was arguably the most refined, certainly the most practical with its twin luggage compartments, and the one with the best dealer network behind it. It is worth pausing to consider the American context of 1966, the year Volkswagen of America finally pushed the Type 3 seriously into dealerships. The country was prosperous, the post-war economic boom had not yet turned. Families were buying second cars for the first time. The compact car segment was growing, and Volkswagen's reputation, built on years of honest Beetle advertising by Doyle Dane Bernbach, was probably the strongest it had ever been for a foreign brand in America. The timing, in other words, was about as good as it was ever going to be. Whether VW's domestic organization used that moment as well as it could is a question worth asking. Section 4. The fuel injection milestone of 1968. This is, without question, the most historically significant chapter in the Type 3's story, and it is one that even many enthusiasts do not fully appreciate. For the 1968 model year, Volkswagen offered the Type 3 1,600 inches, an E specification. The E stood for Einspritzung, the German word for injection. And what that meant was Bosch D-Jetronic electronic fuel injection. Let that settle for a moment. The Volkswagen Type 3 was the world's first volume production automobile to offer electronic fuel injection as standard equipment. Fuel injection had existed before this. Of course, mechanical systems had appeared on racing and performance cars going back decades. But no mass-produced economy car had ever offered electronic fuel injection to ordinary buyers. The Bosch D-Jetronic system was a genuine technological breakthrough, using vacuum and pressure sensors to calculate the precise fuel dose the engine needed under any given condition. Volkswagen made the fuel-injected 1600E standard equipment on every single Type 3 sold in the United States from the 1968 model year through to the very end of production in 1973. European and other markets had the choice of carbureted versions, but American buyers got the injected engine as standard. The irony is that this sophisticated, genuinely pioneering piece of technology made the car more difficult and more expensive to repair at American Volkswagen dealers who were accustomed to carburetors. The D-Jetronic system's reliability record was, to put it diplomatically, mixed. Also arriving for 1968, mid-year, a 3-speed fully automatic transaxle became available. Combined with a new double-jointed independent rear suspension using CV joints, replacing the earlier swing axle, this gave the automatic-equipped cars notably better handling than their predecessors. For 1969, the CV-jointed rear axle became standard on all Type 3S, manual or automatic. The handling improvement was real and significant. Section 5. The 1970 facelift and the final years. By 1970, the Type 3 received its most substantial visual update. The nose was extended by 115 millimeters, giving the car a slightly longer, more contemporary look. The front luggage compartment gained an additional 42 liters of usable space as a result. New bumpers, enlarged front turn signal lenses that wrapped around the corners, and revised taillights completed the exterior refresh. Mechanically, the car was by now well sorted. The 1600cc fuel-injected engine, the CV-jointed rear suspension, front discs, these were established parts of the package. It was a comfortable, practical, economical family car by any reasonable measure. Fuel economy was strong by the standards of the era, and running costs remained modest. What it was not was exciting. And in the early 1970s, with Volkswagen already developing the front-wheel drive, water-cooled Golf, known in America as the Rabbit, the writing was on the wall. The air-cooled, rear-engined formula that had sustained Volkswagen for 3 decades was approaching its end. The last Type 3 rolled off the Wolfsburg production line in July of 1973. The Wolfsburg facilities were then retooled to produce the Golf. The Emden plant briefly continued Type 3 production before it, too, was repurposed, eventually building the first-generation Passat, sold in America as the Dasher. In total, 2,587,989 Type 3S across all body styles, all markets, across 12 years of production. Over 1,400,000 saloon bodies, notchbacks and fastbacks, and more than 1,200,000 squareback variants. Volkswagen noted at the time that they were the only manufacturer in the world to achieve such a high proportion of estate-bodied cars within a single model line's total production. Section 6. What they cost then and what they cost now. In period, the Volkswagen Beetle sedan was retailing in the United States for around $1,595. At the start of the 1960s, the Type 3, when it arrived officially through Volkswagen of America for the 1966 model year, was positioned as a step above the Beetle, priced accordingly. It was not a cheap car relative to what Americans expected from Volkswagen, which is part of why it never threatened Beetle sales figures. Today, the market for clean Type 3s has been quietly strengthening. According to Classic.com, which tracks auction and private sale results across the market, the average recorded sale price for a Volkswagen Type 3 currently sits at approximately $17,905. The highest auction result in their database is $85,800, achieved on the 22nd of January 2025 for a 1964 Notchback in exceptional condition. At the low end of the market, honest drivers in presentable condition can be found for under $10,000. The rarest and most desirable examples, pristine early Notchbacks, unmolested Squarebacks with original paint, or anything that retains its factory D-Jetronic injection in working order, command a premium that the market is clearly willing to pay. Part of what is driving values upward is simple scarcity. More than half a century of neglect, rust, creative improvements, and parts cannibalism has thinned the survivor population considerably. Finding a numbers-matching, rust-free, unmodified example in any body style is genuinely difficult work today. The Volkswagen Type 3 deserved better than it got. It arrived at the right moment, offered genuine engineering intelligence that pancake engine is still an elegant solution to a real problem, and in the 1968 fuel injection system, it contributed something to automotive history that every car on the road today carries forward in one form or another. The fact that Volkswagen itself seemed uncertain about how hard to push it, particularly in the American market, robbed the car of the sales volumes it might have achieved. The Beetle's shadow was simply too long. And when Volkswagen finally committed its future to water-cooled front-wheel drive designs, the Type 3 was quietly retired without the send-off it warranted. But the enthusiasts who drove them, owned them, worked on them, they knew what they had. A car that could carry the family and the luggage, that sipped fuel when American V8s were drinking it by the gallon, that offered a level of engineering thoughtfulness you simply did not find at that price point in the early 1960s. If you owned a Type 3, a Notchback, a Fastback, or a Squareback, we would genuinely like to hear about it. What color was it? What year? Did you have one of the fuel-injected cars, and did the D-Jetronic give you fits, or did yours run like a watch? Drop it in the comments below. These cars have stories, and so do the people who drove them. If you found this video worthwhile, please consider giving it a like. It makes a real difference to how this channel reaches people who care about the same things we care about. And if you are not already subscribed, we would be glad to have you. We cover these cars the way they deserve to be covered, carefully, honestly, and with respect for the people who know them best. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.